When residents of Lake Macquarie go to the polls on July 24th, they'll elect a mayor from a list of candidates. But that could change in 1995. Some aldermen like Bob Tussis want the mayor to be elected by council.
I feel that if it's good enough for a Prime Minister to be elected by his colleagues, the Premier to be elected by his colleagues, then the Mayor of a town should be elected. After all, there are 177 councils in New South Wales, only 7. We're one of 7 that elects the Mayor by popular vote.
If the Mayor was elected by aldermen, it would prevent a repeat of the fiasco which occurred with former Mayor Doug Carley. Although Mr Carley had lost the support and confidence of council, he could not be voted out because he was popularly elected.
If you consider the episode we've just had with Alderman Carley, where a vote of no confidence doesn't mean a thing, and we had to wait till he decided to retire. Now, I don't think that's very good, and I don't think it's something that the people of Lake Macquarie should carry.
Council will decide in 2 weeks whether or not residents should have a say on the issue at the July election. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
More than $340,000 have been spent by Newcastle City in getting its controversial Summerhill dump proposal off the drawing board and through an inquiry. Now council is to spend another $123,000 on further studies of the tip.
We're now on to the project proper. We've got to get on with the job and see that it's all brought to fruition.
The money will be spent on consultants to revise the tip's operation plans and the design, and to undertake further geotechnical work to take groundwater readings. The Lord Mayor insists these studies were not needed before council approved the dump 3 months ago.
We did all the work necessary to prove up the site, but when you get down to practical terms of doing it, well, you need to go further. It's not proper to do that on the chance that it won't be approved at all.
But Maryland resident Nancy Malcolm, who led the opposition to the dump being built so close to the suburb, says the further studies are not only costly, but indicate there are still question marks about the site.
They have had ample opportunity to do their investigation in the primary submissions that they did do. Why is it now necessary to go back and revise the concept?
The Lord Mayor expects the Summerhill dump will be operating in about 2 years.
Nicola Glessick and his 2 sons, Wally and Danny, were convicted of the murder of Constable Doug Eaton and the wounding of Constable Edwin Gill when they were disturbed breaking into the Toronto Country Club in April 1977. All were given double life sentences. Danny and Wally were released in 1989. Their father's sentence was reduced under the Truth in Sentencing legislation to a minimum 15.5 years, which expired last April. Nicola Glessick's application for release was sent to the Serious Offenders Review Board and an independent psychiatric assessment was done. The board said today its intention is to refuse parole. Glessick will appeal to the courts against that decision. The hearing set down for Friday the 23rd of July in Sydney. The Police Association has actively opposed any release for Glessick and has strongly criticised the earlier release of his 2 sons.
"28-year-old Christine Eade works for the Salvation Army. She devotes a lot of her time to helping other people, but she too needs help. Chris needs a new heart and new lungs. When she was 14, she discovered she had a hole in her heart, which stops the blood flowing to her lungs.
When I was about 20, they said to me, well, you're looking at a transplant down the track sometime. It'll be a heart-lung transplant, and you know, they didn't know, they can't give a time on that. You know, they said, probably about 10 years. Well, it's now 8 years.
Chris keeps hoping and praying that any day now she'll receive a call or a message on her beeper, which will mean a new start to life.
You're living moment by moment, very much so, because you never know when the beeper's going to go off. You have to have a plan B for everything.
Chris is one of 3,000 Australians waiting for organ transplants, and it's a frustrating wait. Australia has the lowest organ donation rate in the developed world. To change that, today was set aside as an awareness day, and volunteers were spreading the word at shopping centres and motor registries, encouraging people to indicate on their licence or on a donor card their willingness to participate. But even if you do indicate it on your licence, your wishes may not be fulfilled if you don't tell your family, because they have the final say.
We don't want anyone to die. We're not wishing for people to die for us. But we're just asking people to stop, think about it, make a decision and then talk about it.
Runners left the Trial Bay Jail at 7:30 this morning for the 42-kilometre race. It wasn't long before the pack sorted themselves out and 41-year-old Chris Goodsell from Roos Hill in Sydney took control. Goodsell set a strong pace, his nearest rival former two-time winner Greg Love from Yamina. Goodsell crossed the line in the record time of 2 hours and 35 minutes. Love came in 5 minutes behind him, followed by local South West Rocks runner Carl Winter. The first woman home was Sydney's Joan Eisenhuth.
The day's festivities began on the ground with musical entertainment and a display of vintage cars and motorbikes. On the beach, kites of all shapes, sizes and colours decorated the skyline as professional flyers mixed with the public. The windy conditions suited the kite flyers perfectly as they moved their craft high above the ground. This is the fourth Sky Show and Festival to be held at Crescent Head, and it attracted more than 7,000 people to the area today. A giant fireworks display tonight will wrap up the Queen's birthday celebrations.
A windswept Taree Park was the venue for the Enviro Fair, and despite the testing weather conditions, around 6,000 people attended. The event was the final one on the Manning Green Week calendar, the aim of today to raise the community's consciousness about their environment and what they can do to improve it. And the 43 stalls were full of ideas as to how they can achieve this. Alan Young from the Organic Gardeners Group had a few hints on the composting frontier, while local company Mudlark were displaying mud bricks as an alternative material for house building. There was also information from land and dune care groups, plus a display of works by local Aboriginal artist Russell Saunders. EnviroFair coordinator Joanne Wallace has been encouraged by today's response and believes the community is becoming more environmentally aware.
They are thinking a lot more of what they are doing in their households, in their own backyards.
All was quiet at the Stella Street address this morning, but last night at around 9:15, a 31-year-old woman opened the door of her house to find a man armed with a sawn-off shotgun. Police say the pair had a conversation before a struggle occurred in which the woman grabbed the gun. The weapon fired, the pellets hitting the roof of the veranda. The attacker fled, leaving the gun on the front lawn.
Heard the lady screaming and run across the road.
Police were called from a neighbour's house. The woman was treated for shock. A 3-year-old boy who was in the house at the time of the incident was not injured. The wanted man is described as 180 centimetres tall and was wearing a black T-shirt and blue jeans. Police searched the area but could find no sign of the man. It's thought the incident may have involved a business deal.
Enthusiasts say it's more than playing a grown-up version of war games. There are two different styles of matches played in a championship: speedball, where both sides rush at each other, trying to rack up quick hits or capturing field markers. The other is a stalking tactical battle fought in a large open area. Both games rely on teamwork and a surge of adrenaline. The balls can pack a bit of a sting, even more so when someone plays a cruel trick and freezes them. South Australia won the championship, Queensland second, and the Newcastle team Hunters finished third.
Police were called to the Newcastle suburb of Carrington around 9 last night. Peter John Miller of Gibb Street, Carrington, and known to locals by the nickname Ponk, had been stabbed. He was taken to hospital for treatment and returned to his Gibb Street home. Around 1 a.m, police believe he then walked to nearby Robertson Street, where he was stabbed again several times. Neighbours alerted police. Another ambulance was called. Miller was taken to John Hunter Hospital, where he later died. Today, police were back at the scene. The incident has devastated the inner city community.
He was a very respected person around Carrington. Everyone loved him.
18-year-old Douglas Johnson, also from Carrington, appeared in Newcastle local court today, charged with malicious wounding and murder. The police prosecutor requested that Douglas Johnson be refused bail due to the serious nature of the offences. Johnson was remanded in custody and is due to reappear in Newcastle court on June 29th. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Played at the South Walls End soccer fields, both Glendale in the white and Whitebridge in the green are no strangers to playing under pressure. In last week's semi-finals, Whitebridge High beat West Walls End in a penalty shootout, while Glendale narrowly beat their Mayfield opponents 2-1. Today's final was hard fought, with both teams matching kick for kick and tackle for tackle. The game remained locked at 0-0 until 15 minutes before full time. Then Glendale's Craig Fay shot the ball into the net. From then on, Glendale took control of the match, Matthew Brogan heading the ball past the goalie for a penalty corner. Minutes later, a Glendale player was given a yellow card for holding his opponent back. The penalty kick was blocked and Glendale's Bradley Swancock ran the ball, taking the score to 3-0. Glendale will now go on to compete against schools from all across the state in the round-robin competition. The finals are due to be played in September.
After 46 years in local government and 7 as Lake Macquarie City Council's town clerk, you'd think whether John Rankin goes through with his resignation this month or next would make little difference. But apparently it does, because that's what's at the centre of a new council controversy. Mr Rankin says he intends to retire at the end of July.
I intend to resign as quickly as I can after the mayoral election, or at the same time. It will depend on the new general manager.
But former Lake Mayor Ivan Welsh and Independent Alderman Alan Davis believe Mr Rankin should hand in his notice before July the 1st, when the new Local Government Act comes into force. They say under the new Act, the town clerk's position is scrapped to make way for a general manager. And that means Mr Rankin could receive not only his retirement entitlements, such as superannuation, but a redundancy package that Mr Welsh and Alderman Davis estimate could be worth up to $250,000.
And one can only speculate that there may be a motive of some possible double dipping.
It's an argument Mr Rankin dismisses.
Intention is, irrespective, that I would continue on my present salary, whether I was temporary or permanent as an employee here. The difference in disbursements and leave loadings is less than $1,000.
A council committee is meeting tonight to try and nut out what Mr Rankin is entitled to.
Why is it necessary to discuss a package or to discuss the situation with the town clerk if he's just going to mosey along?
The council's consultants have begun interviews to choose the new general manager. Nobody's saying how many applicants there are, but the new GM can expect to sign a 5-year contract worth up to $170,000 annually. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Coal was first mined at Lambton Colliery in the 1890s. The resource was rich, providing jobs and profits for a century. The mine was recently closed and some of the buildings have been demolished, but the question of what to do with the site remains. Tom Hoare and Mick Broadbent spent all their working lives here. They, like many in the community, would like to see this part of Australia's mining history preserved.
Sad to see so many good buildings really reduced to rubble, because there's some very fine old buildings there.
The public was today given a rare opportunity to look over the site. A task force has been established to work out how the remaining buildings could be used.
It could be used for, let's for example, a little shopping centre. It could be used for schools. It could be used for community organisations. It could be used for art galleries. The whole range is there.
The National Trust, Lake Macquarie Council and the mine owner will fund the restoration. Jane Anderson, NBN News. Marjorie Edmonds has had both her legs amputated as a result of long-term diabetes. At 78, living at home was too difficult, but Marjorie still wanted to retain her independence. The Redhead Gardens retirement village has given her that option.
And I enjoy it here very much. All the people, all of us, we all, just one big family, you could say.
The hostel was officially opened today. The $3 million 40-room complex has commanding views of the ocean. Each resident has their own self-contained room, but all the meals are catered for.
Press all on this set.
Land Council. No, he's not in Liverpool, is it? Or wherever it was, Fairfield.
They picked it up?
Yeah, they picked it up and fiddled with it. Wouldn't be too strong.
The mayoral chair at Lake Macquarie Council has been empty since Doug Carley resigned in May, but today the process of electing a replacement began with the announcement of nominations. There are few surprises. Independent Alderman John Kilpatrick, Alan Davis, Greg Piper and Mark Booth will all stand. Former Mayor Ivan Welsh is having another go, while the Labor candidate is Alderman John Jenkins. Also standing as independents, Warners Bay Baker Peter Craig, 22-year-old Richard Hill and former Argenton resident Stephen Katsikis. Alderman John Kilpatrick has drawn prime position on the top of the ballot paper, but he admits that with so many independents standing, the job of toppling the ALP has been made difficult.
It makes it more difficult, that's obvious, because the preferences won't necessarily follow and a lot of booths won't be manned, so people won't actually follow a ticket. So it will make it that much harder.
Also to be decided on Saturday the 24th of July, an alderman for Ward 2, which stretches from Redhead in the north to Catherine Hill Bay in the south. The position will be contested by 5 candidates. All were at today's nomination draw. They are Green Independent John Selway, ALP endorsed Bill Steenson, and Independents Ken Winning, Peter Craig and Stuart Inglis. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Both sides were eager to impress selectors in the hope of bagging an Australian schoolboy's jumper. New South Wales lock Keith Dowling found plenty of holes up the middle, and within the first few minutes he found the gap he'd been looking for. The Queenslanders bounced straight back, but had a try ruled as a double movement. The Blues worked the Maroons' try line for nearly 10 minutes, backwards and forwards, until the brute strength of Craig Gower got them over. After the break, New South Wales became predictable at times, and it nearly cost them dearly. However, Queensland were kept to a single try, the Blues finishing comfortable winners.
Early this morning, flowers had already been placed at the scene, marking the sad loss for friends and family. Last night, a 14-year-old Wanji girl was driving her mother's car down Bay Road at Bolton Point. The car mounted the footpath and travelled on its side for a short distance before slamming into a power pole. The 2 passengers, a 14-year-old girl from Ellamore Vale and a 15-year-old girl from Bolton Point, died at the scene. The girl driving the car survived with minor injuries. The tragedy happened just before midnight on the eve of the driver's 15th birthday.
It's a warning for people that before they get into a motor vehicle to have a licence and have the necessary experience in driving motor vehicles.
The Accident Investigation Unit is making inquiries. The vehicle was a mangled wreck. Joan Anderson, NBN News.
Kew is a traditional haunt of bikies, and about 100 rolled into town for the Harley Family Barbecue Day. The get-together held on the last Saturday of every month, offering enthusiasts a chance to talk shop about their hobby. A local band called the Ghost Road entertained the participants, but the real attraction of the event was the Harleys. Owner of local bike shop Keith McClure said Harley Davidsons are continuing to grow in popularity. He said all sorts of people love the bikes, from doctors to bricklayers. It's the 3rd year in a row that the Nabiac Charity Fun Run has been held. 80 people participated in the event to help raise money for sick kids at Camperdown Children's Hospital and Manning Base Hospital. The starter's gun sounded at 10 o'clock, setting the Gluttons for Punishment off on their half marathon. The gruelling 26-kilometre course was not easy for everyone, but some runners found it harder than others. Taree's Richard Sewell won the event in a time of 1 hour and 39 minutes. For his efforts, he won 5 nights accommodation for 2 on the Gold Coast. His father David also ran, pushing Richard's younger brother David Jr. over the course. Amanda Cavill was the first woman home with a time of 1 hour and 56 minutes. $25,000 was raised from the event, and organisers are keen to hold it again next year.
Bruce Stowell's resignation took effect immediately. Today, General Manager David McQuire said Stowell and the club will not officially comment on the circumstances surrounding the resignation until next week.
Well, that will all be discussed next week when both Bruce and the club, or a representative of the club, will make an announcement on that as a joint situation, probably Tuesday next week.
David McQuire says the club is considering a replacement for Stowell.
Well, it's always difficult when you have people that have been here a couple of years leaving in any job, but that's up to the board now to decide which way they'd like to go.
As for the club's financial position, General Manager David McQuire refused to comment. Jane Anderson, NBN.
Charlestown have been languishing on the bottom of the ladder, but you would never have known of last night's game. The Butcher boys came out firing and at one stage had an 8-0 lead. However, Waratah wingers made some inspiring runs down the sideline and eventually put the big boys in a good enough position to score. Waratah big winners in the end, 22-10. Only one game today between Lakes and Curry. That gets underway at Carl Oval at 7:30. Catherine Hill Bay may be one of the smallest clubs in the country, but today their crew had their chests out like they were representing the biggest. The Catho team won the rescue event, came third in the mass rescue and finished fourth in the overall point score. However, Nobbies were the big winners. They won 2 events and recorded more points than any other club. Tea Gardens also scored a number of places in the finals. In all but one final, Newcastle branch clubs won or took a place. The surf wasn't as big as yesterday, but it still caused some crews plenty of headaches.
At Avoca Beach, it can be very unpredictable. You can get a 4-metre swell come through and then it'll go down to nothing. It just comes up out the blue.
The next IRB Carnival will be the Caltex Grand Prix at Womberall in July, with thousands of dollars worth of gear up for grabs. The Newcastle under-14s team in the green skirts has so far played 15 games and only lost 3. This afternoon the girls came up against Ku-ring-gai and were outdone for speed. In the under-15s the run of play was reversed, Newcastle all over Ku-ring-gai. The Newcastle girls played aggressively and it paid off. Wagga in the black and white gave Cessnock a lesson in defensive play. Nearly every attempt they made was stopped by the goalkeeper. The championships continue tomorrow at various venues around Newcastle and Lake Macquarie.
They say it's part of their adventure training program, but 6 Queensland soldiers have pledged the proceeds of a Brisbane to Melbourne bike ride to the Sudden Infant Death Syndrome Research Foundation. All members of the 106th Field Workshop Company, the riders hope to raise $5,000 from their 9-day trip. And it's a hard way to get home from Sydney, but another group of cyclists set out from Darling Harbour this morning for Newcastle, this time to raise public awareness and funds for Canteen, the Australian Teenage Cancer Patients Society. It was a thank you gesture by 16-year-old Troy Newman, who's been on the receiving end of cancer treatment. He was eagerly joined by about 20 other riders, all receiving a warm welcome when they made Newcastle late this afternoon.
The place could not be more appropriately named. Basham's property, 10 kilometres out of Warrialda. For the past 3 years now, the Warrialda Motorsports Club has been staging the rough and tough test of man and machine. The formula is simple. Build a vehicle that can handle the terrain and drive it around as quickly as possible. The Saturday is devoted to a short course to establish qualifying times and give the spectators a chance to see the action. On the Sunday, they set off in pairs at 30-second intervals to find the fastest over the 30-kilometre course. Several classes are conducted for various engine sizes and chassis design, but the outright honours on the weekend went to the Narromine team of David Mendham, Andrew Glasson and John Batchelor in car number 170. Second were Michael and Les Bowden of Warhope, and third, Rod and Jeanette Simpson and Ben Caton of Dubbo. The event was combined as round 3 of the National Off-Road Championships. The next round will be staged at Kempsey next month.
"38 teams fought out the titles in perfect conditions in Taree over the weekend. The state carnival was divided into 4 pools, with each playing a round-robin competition. Organisers say the standard of this year's carnival was high, and this made for some interesting tussles in the finals. The Far North Coast side was unlucky against Sydney in the A-grade final, going down 3-2. Newcastle beat the City side in the B-grade final. Orange took out the C-grade, while an impressive Coffs Harbour outfit kept Newcastle scoreless in the D-grade final. Late yesterday, the state representative side was announced, with 2 Far North Coast players selected. They will go on to play in the new Invitational Carnival at Mount Gambier in September.
Senior philosophy lecturer Brian Birchall has been banned from union premises and has had his union privileges withdrawn for 5 years. The circumstances surrounding the ban are unclear. His solicitor, Roger Proust, told a news conference today Dr Birchall is facing 2 court cases in August and September over allegations raised by the university itself, and he was unable to comment further on the matters. He says the union's action followed a board meeting.
Dr Birchall was attending a University of New England Union board meeting, and he was going to be asked questions, as I understand it, by the board of directors in a in-camera session of the board meeting, and anything further from that I am not at liberty to say, because those matters are now before the courts.
But he did slam the union's ban as outrageous and onerous.
Our attitude in relation to what the union's done is that they advanced no reason why they could not wait until the matters had been dealt with by the courts and then proceeded in accordance with their constitution. They've advanced no reason for the urgency or their precipitous behaviour.
Welcome to Radio Richo. Informative. Attentive. Hard-hitting. And above all, friendly, particularly to those with nice things to say. Usually the Federal Minister for Health, Senator Graham Richardson, was today the talkback king of Newcastle, joining Radio 2HD's Jeff Jay for a session. The Senator, who's had a go at all forms of the media, says talkback radio is fun, and he thinks the listeners believe so too.
They're sitting there in their lounge rooms and they're able to take on a cabinet minister, call him names or tell him he's a dill, whatever is necessary. And they're very good at doing that here in Newcastle, and it's a good thing.
Today, the listeners were mainly quizzing Senator Richardson about health issues, particularly private cover and the possibility of tax rebates for those who take out their own insurance. The man who's been everything from a radio star to a TV variety show host has no plans of giving up his day job.